Okay, welcome to Coach Robin Stewart. We're talking linebackers today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
Thanks. So let's go straight into it. I'm, so I sent you the question, and I'm going to adjust it a little bit. So
Okay.
um, I want you to talk us through stances, read steps, and movements, like the flow. But I
Yeah.
should really say the stance is a movement that you like because everybody's got different sort of views on that. So I'm
Yeah.
just interested in your view.
Yeah. I guess it's a bit different with the what I find with the stance, like coaching women. I coach women and I coach guys. Obviously, the way that women's bodies are different to men is our hips are a lot bigger. So our stances I found alter differently, which I probably didn't realise until I started coaching the two different genders. Um, Obviously women with bigger hips, the movement's completely different. Um, I personally, with the girls, like to do a little bit of a wider base just because our hips are obviously a lot wider, and then look to angle the toes in just slightly so it allows us to open for the pass more. Um, and what I've also sort of found with women, especially, is getting low, and unless they are a short linebacker, it seems to be that the strength of going forward from a low position is actually quite a lot more difficult. Whether that's just a case of the women are probably a little less athletic, some of them, not all of them, and it's just quite an odd position, I guess, for a woman to be in with their toes pointing in. Um, but then coaching the guys, I try and do the same fundamentals, with a shoulder width base, toes slightly in, especially for the middle linebackers. But there's not massive amounts of difference. I think the only thing that I find with the women's stance is that we just widen up a little bit. Just gives us that extra edge. Like any woman that starts in the linebacker stance with a skinny foot base seems to struggle more with any kind of movement, whether it's forwards or backwards. So it just seems to help us. I mean, if you look at like Phoebe's stance, Phoebe's like super low. But her base and her feet are actually quite wide, and that's how it's a perfect example of like the women's hips creating the differences in the stances for the girls to the guys.
Oh, that's
um,
really interesting. And it kind of is backed up by, I just say the what's best for the player, what works for the player, and you're doing
yeah,
exactly that. But
yeah. So I think, I mean, I've been really lucky that we've had female physios with the GB program, and they understand obviously it's different for women, whereas it's not something that male coaches have ever, football for the women's games fairly like young, and it's quite very much in its infancy. So if guys are coming from ex-players and they're joining women's team, like I think that the education, like we never question their football knowledge, but the education that should be given to coaching a women's team, not just oh, they're women, they learn differently, or they do this and they do that, but physiologically we're actually different.
yeah,
And I think the exposure that we have, I mean, we have a great setup. I wish we had more exposure and more coaches and more 11-a-side football, of course. Um, but actually educating the difference on, an O-line stance for a woman, like that stance is completely different for a guy to a girl. Um, and I think maybe educating the coaches in the respect of physiological sides of it. When you see a big guy turn up, you're always a big guy. It's the same in the women's game. But what I found with coaches that are new to coaching women is that they just expect you to be able to be in the same stance because you're the same size. And obviously we're not. We're
no,
completely different setup, essentially, aren't we? Like built. So that's something, like I said, I never really realised until because I did a bit of coaching with the women's stuff, and I think being in my stance, I'm quite broad anyway, so my stance is quite broad. I'm one of the taller linebackers, so when I stand next to Phoebe and Afia and them, I look like I'm not crouching because I'm inches taller than they are. But I just struggle just because my hips are wide and things like
sure.
that. But working with the physios, I mean, I actually did some work with Jay from London Warriors, the running back coach there. Like he was like, oh, this is what you need to do for your pass because your hips are different. Like, this is how you do it. And I was just like, I've never even thought about it. So if I haven't thought about like how I'm made up, then how are we sort of expecting coaches to do that?
Sure, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
I suppose, I would say, if you're in a wide base, what we think is, uh, if I'm coaching a linebacker and he's got a wide base, he might take a step in before he takes a step out to flow. But if you're not doing that, then why not be in a wider stance?
Yeah, and I think like the stance for me, it's got to be like the most important thing. It's, you've got to be comfortable in it. You spend far too much time in this stance, whether you're reading or whether you're, getting ready or whether you're training, like it has to be comfortable. And I think understanding your body is part one of that.
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned, and that's something that I really like, and I rarely see people talk about why we do it. Why do you have your toes pointed in rather than out?
So it sounds really silly, and this is one of the first things I ever learned at football because I had no idea. So the best way I found that I coach it is if I get people to stand like like a penguin, I guess, and spin, and they'll only turn up to like here maybe. Whereas if you point your toes in, the angle which your body allows you to move, like it gives you more of a turning circle, purely because of them from being here to here. Obviously, it allows your hips to open. I mean, it doesn't work in every position at all, but I find it works linebacker wise. So because we obviously have the run and the pass responsibility, it's probably more prominent in the linebackers specifically. But I know a difference when I'm being lazy and my toes aren't in to when I'm settled. When my toes are in a little bit, I feel like my weight's further forward because I have to be further forward to put my toes in. It makes my nose above my knees. And it being the linebacker that I am, I like to go forward, but so it assists me in my pass game, which is something that I've really struggled with previously. But I just think, why would you not help yourself for an extra 30 degrees for starting your toes facing 10 degrees in compared to where they are? Like, it's little things that make such a massive difference, which I think coaches are like I've spoken to coaches that have been coaching longer than I have, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't realise that. And I'm like, you just got to educate each other. Like,
absolutely. I mean, I love it. And that 30% is a lot. When you get players to try it, they're just amazed how much further. And we're talking about turning to drop, pass drop, aren't we? So it's just an amazing difference. And how often do you see that in a book? I've rarely seen it in a book or anything.
It's absolutely crazy. Like, it was something that I learned from my first club coach, like Coach Wake, and he literally was just like, just point your toes in, you'll see such a difference. And I did it, and I was like, why have I not been told that before? Like, it's the simplest of things that made things, I looked like 10 times better at it. It was brilliant. I thought, well, that's one. If it helps one person out of a group of 10, then it's worth going over it once.
Yeah, sure. Hopefully we've helped my 31 subscribers. So then we'll move on to, let's do the sort of shuffle and alley then. So, How do you coach that or teach it?
So I'm going to start with the read step first, to be fair, because I personally don't, when I'm playing, when I first started playing middle linebacker, there was a lot to learn. Right, we don't play a lot of 11-a-side football, so to be put in a role in like when you have like 5 big people knowing that at least one of them is going to get you, kind of thing. The read step for me was like really unnatural. I always had my weight over, but for the smarts of the game, I always used to coaches used to say to me, you need to step forward, you need to step forward. And I'd be like, and then I started stepping forward, and then I was missing the read. And he went, why have you missed the read? I was like, because I'm so concerned about this read step. The first thing I'm thinking is, take a step, now have a look what you're doing. I understand the reasoning by having a read step, it gets you going forward. But in the same respect, like if you read pass, why would you want to step forward? And I think I've gone about it quite a bit, like educating people in football, I think, especially in like the lower level of books, maybe, you know, you get your big guys, your big middle linebackers in that, you know, you blitz all the time. We're not making them like the longevity of American football. We're not actually teaching them to be sort of football smart and understanding what the reads are and things. So I know I've had coaches saying, I just wish you'd read step. I wish you'd read step. And I'd be like, I will when I'm confident with my reads. Like once I get used, I'm not so bad at it now. Like when I first started there, I was like, right, take this read step. Now what's the guard doing? And then by that point, the guard was in my face because they knew exactly what they were doing. And I was losing. And I said to the coaches, I was like, can I just work on my reads? Because at the minute, that read step's making me half a second slower. I had a massive conversation with the coach at the time, and he was like, well, let's have a look on film. So we did, and it was right. Every time I didn't step, I made the play. And every time I did step, I got caught up in something that was 2 plays ago when I've not stepped. So I understand in theory it's good to go forward, but until we're at the level where, you know, you can make the right read and go forward at the same time, I think the read steps sort of, it's important, but it's not the first bit you should learn at linebacker for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a bit ahead of your time. I just talking to Coach Hewitt from the NFL Academy, and me and him both say, just bounce on, and not bounce up and down, just sort of light on your feet, and get that read.
Yeah, it's going to bear with me 1 second. Like the sun has been knocked out in Leeds all day today, and all of a sudden it's coming through my window.
That's fine.
Yeah, so I think like in regards, it's too dark now. Yeah, sorry, Simon.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I think for the game to progress to the point where we're competing at a high level internationally at club levels, I think educating the game I think athleticism is really important, but I actually think that football smarts will get us a lot further in the world from youth and all that sort of stuff as well. I think in the women's game it's difficult because we only play 7-a-side. So having 3 O-linemen, normally obviously at middle, if you're in a 10 tech, you'd read the guard that's on your side. But actually in the 7-a-side game, they're a guard and a tackle. They're the end O-linemen, but they're also the first one next to the centre. So it's like a really awkward, unless you're sort of heads up or outside, like sometimes it's actually easier to read the centre because the centre essentially is a centre guard. So translating the women's 7-a-side game at middle linebacker, as much as it's easier because there's less gaps, there's less space, like for us to get round, you know, for 4 plays for 25 yards or whatever it is, the actual learning of middle linebacker is really difficult. And I think that's why coaches kind of get a bit obsessed with this read step, because they're like, well, you know, you can't really read, you're in the guard or the centre, well, just make sure you're going forward. Which I don't like to coach. Like I'd rather them read it, see it come in, and then make a move.
Definitely.
To get the brains working, really. Especially at the book, because I coach a books team at linebacker as well, and I've never specifically, unless they do it naturally, I'll mention it to them. But for me, especially at middle, it's, you know, your eyes are on you, communicating and all that sort of stuff. Really.
I'm totally with you on that. The only time I would sort of enforce it if they kept taking us backward step rather than and then okay, it's a compromise. You're gonna have to take a forward step, but
I think as long as they're not flat-footed and they're not going backwards, like, you know, and they are not just stood looking at the sky, like as long as they're doing something, like, I mean, I've been playing linebacker now 4 or 5 years, and I'm getting there. Like I'm happy with my read stuff. So now I'm working on the next step, you know, the next step, constantly going on. And I think especially like books football, you get 3 years, 4 years out of these guys. the women's game, it can be a great recruitment one year and then a bad recruitment the next year, and you know, you end up with no O-linemen, so you've got like the smaller girls playing, and then some teams have got like big. I mean, we've been blessed at Leeds. Some years we've had some of the best O-line in the country. Like it's great for me at training, because you know I'm training against the best. You know, Laura Dye, Becca Butler, Ellie Prendergrass, Kaylee Wybrow, like people that move like footballers that cause me issues, which have allowed me to sit and read. Because you know, when they pull properly, and you know, when it's a pass, their pass is brilliant. But in the same respect, like I had to go forward with them girls, because if I took a step backwards, they were, and I read it wrong.
Yeah, you'd be on roller skates.
I was in a whole lot of trouble. Like it was great. I mean, I've been caught flat-footed a few times with them girls, but I didn't do it again that session, that's for sure. But coaching wise, like we've just got to put the girls in the right place. I think as long as they're low, you know, and they've got the leverage and they can see it coming, like they'll go forward naturally anyway. So read step wise. I think it's because of a habit that I'm very not against, but I struggled with, that I kind of a little bit more lenient with coaching it. I think the reason why I sort of, when I've been coaching the linebackers at the Bucks team, like the reason why I had two incredible middle linebackers, but they were athletes, and I said to them, like, slow down, we're not going to blitz you this game. And they're like, why not? I'm like, because we need you to get better.
Yeah.
I know you can blitz, but at the minute you're not recognizing a pull or you're not communicating it. Like, let's work at this for next game, because we'll see it. And then once you've got it, you can have all the fun you want blitzing and doing all that sort of stuff. But until that point, it's difficult. But I feel like the women's game needs to start progressing for the likes of the box players. Like on a personal level, we know we need to be seeing 5 O-line. And then you look at sort of outside the box, you need QBs that can throw on a proper side field. You know, you need receivers that know how important it is to run a route that's longer than 5 yards after a cut, because there's a whole lot more field there. So I think the women's game just needs a bit more of a push.
Well, yeah. So sort of let's talk about she then for your linebackers in sevens, if you wouldn't mind. So I spoke to Afia on Tuesday, and she went into a little bit of depth on the formations that you can use, but we didn't really have time for coverages. So from a linebacker's perspective, how many linebackers do you usually have, and what do they do?
So at Leeds we've varied. We've done sort of a 2-2, 2-3, an occasional sort of 3D line, one linebacker, depending on if it's a run heavy team. I suppose the difference with women's football is the down and distance. You know, we have all these, we still have 4 downs, but we've got twice as much space they have to convert. So, I mean, most linebackers in probably the women's game start probably the same as 11s, 5s to 6. But I know middle linebacker for me personally, like I've had to drop 12, 13, depending on the down and distance. And that's with a safety on the top, because if it's 4th and 20, it's like, and that's just for a first down. So you'll have a lot of teams that will just think, right, just let's just get it gone, rather, because you can't punt or anything. So you have to convert, or we get the ball on the 5 anyway. So we play a lot of cover 2, cover 1, and a lot of flat ball, I guess. So that's how linebackers have the flats. Again, it's not really that true if you were to convert to the women's game, because obviously the pitch is so much more narrow. Like it wouldn't even be hashes to hashes. Like our pitch, if you put our pitch on a full-size football field, you're looking at hashes to hashes, and you've got to have 7 people on the defense in that space. So we kind of depend, obviously down a distance. If you're looking at the pass drops and stuff, it's more a case of back rather than out.
Right. So that's
because what have you got to lose on a 4th down? You may as well go for a big play rather than run it for one when you've got 20 to go. Like, it's not like you can punt it away and try and get better field position, because it literally makes no difference. The ball will start whether you make 1 yard or you make 19. Like, it's not like that. And that's where the challenges come in, I think, probably more so for the defensive coordinators, that we can do it.
That must be a really difficult transition from playing that to 11s for linebackers, especially.
Yeah.
Because you don't, or I can't imagine you see 3rd and 1 very often. Or...
No. No, you don't. And I think it's difficult. I think for me, in the women's game, the DBs are essentially outside linebackers on the 7th field.
Right.
Apart from their, if you were to put it on an 11-side field, it would kind of hit the slot, line in the slot. So the corners, I mean, every team's different, obviously, schematically, but it's not odd to have an outside linebacker playing corner in the 7s game,
right? Because
it's essentially where an outside linebacker would be on an 11s field.
Yeah.
Apart from, say, you're in cover 1, it's man coverage. It's no different to the Sam and the Will in an 11ers game being in cover 1 on the slot. We've just not got the extra bit to go on the outside. We generally find that, I found from 7s, is that the Mike's pass responsibility is probably quite minimal. It's kind of based on like the corners. If you're in like a true middle, like you'll just spy the QB rather than drop, and then everyone around you, because it's quite a small space for coverage players to cover. It's not that difficult. So if you look at, say, cover 2 or cover 1, an 11-a-side field, you obviously have such a band, don't you? You don't have that. It's like a cover 3 bit on the 7s field. So it's always nice to have an athletic safety, that can go down to the run and all the way back if need to. But realistically, pass drops are, you can press people on the line and not have to move. Like, and if they do get the release, it's not that far to go. Like, if you've got the speed back coming out if you've got the running back coming out on a swing pass, for example, the threat of having 2 wide receivers in an 11-a-side game, obviously we don't have that in the 7-a-side game. You'll have 1, maybe 2, but they're that enclosed that you'd bring the safety over, or the linebackers would swing over. It's one thing that pass coverage is quite detrimental in the 7s game for the bigger picture of 11s, not only for the QBs, but backpedaling, knowing that they've got to make 25 yards, but the QB can only throw 10. You kind of get a bit complacent, I think is what we found sort of with teams across the board. I think with playing 7s, that outside linebacker that corner position is actually quite suited for most female athletes. Running backs, wide receivers, DBs, outside linebackers. It's like the big guys, or the smart guys that we struggle to find. We've got some great ones, but where are the next generation of these people coming through? Whereas, like, the skill set of the passing law, I guess, is quite suited. So the way that the coaches can make sure that our assignments aren't messed up and we don't get lazy is purely competition within the squads. Everyone wants that position. Everyone wants the pick. Everyone wants to make big plays on the outside. So
just going completely off script, but that's fine. But like, you talked about the Mike spying the quarterback.
Yeah.
Because for me, who I know nothing about 7s apart from Tuesday when I spoke to Afia, for me, when you've got 2D line or 3D line, containing the quarterback's got to be difficult. So is that why you've got the Mike spying, and you sort of roll down?
Yeah, well, the issues, I say issues, it's pros and cons for whichever team you have. Some of the teams have some incredible quarterbacks. Like, you can't leave Joe Kilby unaccounted for. Emma Taylor at Teesside, Sid Green, like, you know, you've got these names and stuff that they are a threat within themselves, and you've automatically, most teams play a 2 down D line, so your numbers are at loss there anyway. You've got 3 O-line and then potentially a running back in pass pro. Why would you account, like, realistically, numbers wise, we should be covered with the receivers, because if you've got the 2 down, that's 5 of us with essentially 2 people left. So it's 5 on 2 with the receivers. So it's just easier to have somebody, because if the coverage is that good, the QB can make a move. Like, it's one thing in the women's game that we actually are quite blessed with is, you know, QBs that are very agile and essentially are a run threat as much as they are a pass threat. And it's great, you know, and we've got QBs that aren't bothered about coming up the A gap. Yeah, it's great. I just, like I said, I'm feeling sorry for the QBs that the pass game is on such a small field, because I think when we go to the likes of World Championships and Europeans, that they don't have the time, because training's not often enough.
Sure.
We don't have that time unless they're doing obviously more and more outside. But, you know, if you go throw a ball around, you need people to catch it, and then you know, it's quite a big thing, isn't it? So yeah.
Oh, right. So just going into sort of practice, so when you're coaching the linebackers, how much emphasis do you do on turnovers, and what do you do for that?
So turnover wise, we sort of do maybe once a week. So fumble recovery, we do like a strip, we call it strip football. So first man in, hand on the ball, try and get it out. Next person, like, secure the tackle, but aim for the ball of the hand. Turnover. We do a lot of fumble recovery drills, and picks. Really, I guess for me, I think, you know, the pass defensive players should be taught as much to catch as the receivers, especially in the 7-a-side games, because the opportunities to turn over the ball and, you know, catch it is like the numbers are in our favour, really.
Yeah, they're receivers that can tackle, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's great, and I think it allows people to get better. And, you know, if when they go to, you know, like Diamond, which is our 11-a-side sort of regional thing, you know, there might not be a DB, or there might be a second string DB, but they actually catch better than the receivers that are there. So, you know, multi-skilling these players that, yes, at club they're starting like outside linebacker, but actually they're a slot receiver. But at their club they have a slot receiver. And I think fumbles, I think, again, like I'm quite hot on turnovers, because, like, my motto is just because the offense start with the ball doesn't mean that they finish with it. So when I've been coaching the linebackers, it's kind of that mentality of like, let's hunt the ball. Like, I've been lucky enough to, you know, I've been an assistant coach under Jason Scott, and he's like, it's all about the ball. Like, doesn't matter what's going on, like, get the ball back. We need the ball. We want to win. We need the ball to win. Like, and it's something, I guess, that until you're around, you just kind of, it's the offense start with the ball. You never think about the end of the play. You just think about, you know, the big hit, or, you know, the pick, or that sort of stuff. But actually, like, the defense have just as much right to finish with it. And I think until you sort of get that mindset involved in any player, it could be D-line or anything like that, I think it's really important. We've been quite lucky, it sort of founded at GB, where we do this 95-90. It's 9 players within 5 yards of the ball 90% of the time. So on film, we have to, like, when we're doing our film review, are we within 5 yards of the ball when it's tackled? And it's like an effort thing. But the more people that are around the ball making the tackle, it inevitably causes more turnovers, you know, more fumbles, more, you know, like pressure on with a pick. And then it's not just a case of you've picked it, but you've got your blockers in front of you. So I think until, like, it's something that I like to coach, because it's something that I guess I'm proud of. Like, you know, when you pick up that, you scoop and score, or it's not even necessarily you scooped and scored, but you've made the block so that the offensive player can't pick it up, which allows somebody else to do it. yeah, I just think like it's purely a mentality thing. And once they get the hype of turning it over, it's not just a big tackle. Like I've got a real dislike for linebackers that whoop themselves when they've made a tackle. Like it should be, you know, the other middle linebacker going, let's go, that's great. But you shouldn't celebrate yourself. You should just be like, I'm a linebacker, you know, a tackle. That's what I have to do in my job, you know. When a receiver catches a ball, they don't catch it, secure it, and then celebrate that they caught the ball. It's literally their job. It's great to score, and I think celebrating the score is different, but celebrating something that you're fundamentally supposed to be doing is
yeah, I'm not sure receivers are the best example, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, like I talk about my linebackers at Griffins, and honestly, I remember before I started coaching, I went down and watched them. They would whoop themselves, and I was like, just be a bit humble about it.
Yeah.
Like just like you do it every day. Like this is what you do. You're middle linebacker, and you're making big plays all the time. And
O-line don't whoop themselves when they made a block, do they?
no, exactly. But like if the guard makes a block, you know, the tackle will like, you know, good job, buddy. Like, but that's what it's about, right? It's not about recognizing your own success. It's about, you know, working together and being successful as a unit. And then it kind of like they were kind of, once I questioned them on it, they were like, oh yeah, I'm not quite sure I do that. I was like, it's so weird. But in the women's game, it's gang tackling in the linebacker core is what I find a lot better coached. Like, especially at Leeds, like if there's one person near the tackle, there's at least two. Like we always laugh and joke when the photos come out that we're stealing each other's stats. You know, we have a stats man, and he's like, you know, Bo 10 tackles, Beth 9 tackles, 3 gang tackles. I'm like, no, they're my tackles. She touched the player. And like, but if you look at the photos, it's very, especially in the middle, like middle to outside, like the apex, I guess, there's never normally just one-on-one tackling.
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah,
more chance of turnover, less chance of avoiding the tackle from the running back.
Yeah, exactly.
So just for perspective, you say you practice turnovers once a week. Is that how many times you practice once a week? Or
No, we do. So we practice twice.
Right.
Obviously, COVID times at the minute. You know, we all have our own. We all carry our own football rounds, and like, we don't share anything and all that sort of stuff. But we make it quite competitive. Well, like when I've coached before, it's a competition thing. And you know, we do it pre-game when we go out on the field. It's the defense. You know, they do the fumble, they do scoop and score in two. So one would scoop, one would block, fumble recovery, one recover, one cover, and then it would be like a versus to like first man to the ball. You know,
right.
It would be a challenge, and then we would do just things like quick outs from even the D-line, just getting the hands. I mean, last season, I remember my D-line picked the ball and he was like, it's working. I was like, yeah. Like, it's such a silly little thing, but
yeah, when you see it on the field, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, he's like, never done that before. Gonna retire now. But it's great, and I think like, you know, because the Sevens games is so limited, I don't see why we shouldn't be teaching all these people everything.
Oh, definitely. Because a D lineman might be a linebacker in a few years' time when you recruit some bigger D linemen, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So definitely. So we always do, or most of us coaches preach that linebackers should communicate. Linebackers should communicate.
Yeah.
So what do we want them to communicate? What do we want them to be saying to people?
So pre-snap is the obvious sort of like formation strength, field boundary. I like it when, you know, we have, say you're running a 4-2, like two true middle. I like 1-2 down and distance, because I think a lot of people don't understand how important down and distance is into strategic sides of football. You know, it's first and 10, but 3rd and 1 is very different to 3rd and 10. And I think if you have somebody that is dedicated, if it's a specific say you're doing Book and Mike in the middle, you know, the Book does the down and distance. Doesn't matter who the book is, but the book is responsible for the down and distance. It just reminds people that, you know, it's probably a passive down, or it's a run down, or, you know, it's, you know, fourth and 1, or, you know, it's a different mindset to what you need to expect, I guess. And then the other is all about formation for me. So I've learned, like, with some of the best people, I guess, that learning the formations and what the formation means to the opposition is actually really important. When we were at Euros against Finland, spent a lot of time with the DC and Laura Moore, who's the linebacker coach at the time. I was like, so if we see this formation, what are the percentage wise, what are the plays? And they're like, you know, they run all bit out this one, they do this one with this one, this one with this one. And then it kind of became sort of a thing between me and the free tech, that I'd like, you know, strong left, field left, bunch left, like check orbit. And the check orbit was purely to, like, my hero of a D lineman, Amy Cottingham, and she literally would just be like, yeah, got it, because she knew that was like the one that I think that's going to come, because on this down and distance and on this formation, it's happened 90% of the time, and 90% of the time, you know, she was making tackle, or she was blowing up the place and it bounced it into whoever the next person was. Again, I think it's pass run, simple things, but it's, I will talk about it again, you know, educating people. When you have O-linemen who don't move like O-linemen, it's really, really difficult to read pass and run truly by not looking at the quarterback. You know, some teams brand new to football, you know, they get girls on the O-line, no fault of their own, but it looks the same every play. And I'm sure, you know, some books teams have some players that, you know, don't read this person because they're not given a true, let's read the tackle rather than the guard, because the guard looks like he's in pass every time, even though it's a run.
Yeah.
So we just got to educate to get the pass run in. But I think pre-snap communication for me is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because if you can make that QB think, even if it's 1 out of 10, oh my God, how should I play?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's really, really important. And obviously, like the run past stuff, or like, it's just, everybody does that. As soon as it's gone, it's not down to one person, but like leading with a confidence as well. Like you always say, and I'm sure, and every club I've ever been at, I've always said the same thing. If they say it's strong left, it's strong left. Don't have an opinion on it. Because if half the team think it's strong right and half the opinion think it's strong left, then there's a whole lot of gaps everywhere. Right. So even if they're wrong, as long as everyone's on the same page, we can still make it work. And I think you've got to be confident in it, even if, you know, you question yourself. You know, you've got to be, to the team, they've got to trust that you are going to communicate. Like, because I mean, I've played next to Afia and it's brilliant because me and her work really well together. You know, I'll say like, what do you want to do? And she'll be like, I'll do this. You're better at this. And you almost create a bond, I guess, in the 11-a-side game, which is missing in the 7s, because you don't have all the people that you can, you know, you're missing 4 players. Pretty sad, really. So, coaching wise, it's, I think, especially because like I said, every year it's very new. Like nobody really comes as a footballer unless they're already in a team and they've like moved house, or, you know, we were really, really lucky at Leeds that we got Lucy Peaty. She played youth, and we've got a girl this year that's done a bit of football at youth as well, and she's come up. But we don't have the advantage of, you know, rugby teams and soccer and all that you get pre-made football players. So I think when it comes to communication, if there is somebody that's saying, right, it's this, they will be like, right, okay, she knows what she's talking about. Let's just do as I'm told. And then being like women, like everyone always says like, oh, can you just tell me why you read that as strong left or strong right? And then you're like, oh, because the rule is this, or it's this formation, this down and distance. And that's one thing I do really enjoy coaching women for, is that we like to know why we do things. And I think if you're a coach that's never had that, it can probably be the hardest thing about coaching women.
Right.
Women talking all the time, but for the right reasons. And you know, we spend quite a lot of time in classroom and stuff like that. But it's more of, you've done this, but why do I do that? Oh, because you want to pull the safety over. All right, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
I mean, fantastic answer, and obviously your linebackers are really lucky they've got you. But, like, there's nothing worse than coaches saying, "Oh, communicate," but without telling players what to communicate. I mean,
yeah,
you can have a conversation about what they did last night, but it's not going to help them on the football field, is it?
no. And to be fair, with the girls, like, I mean, like I said, we've been with Leeds now. I think it's our 7th season we're coming up to. You know, you look at the defense, and we've got 4 of the starting. The starting. I don't know who's starting, but the starting defense have been playing for 7 years.
Right.
So we work well together. You know, we know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and from that, it works out quite well, because then we could pick a rookie. Like, I have a rookie middle linebacker, and I'm like, "Come with me, let's do this." And she's like, "Okay, that's fine." And it helps the coaches, because the stuff that they want is, you know, the safety of tackling, you know, the playbook, the install, and all that sort of stuff. Like, if we can just have a conversation and people go like, what are you saying? And I'll be like, "Oh, it's strong left because there's more people on that side." And they'll go, "Oh, right."
Absolutely.
It's almost like it's like girls seem to think, until they get into it, it's a stupid question. And I found that more so with the women than I have the men. Like, the men will just not question it and just try to beat someone at, like, be athletic, be faster, be harder. Whereas the women will be like, "Can I ask a question?" Which at the start of the season, obviously, is fine. But when we get into the season, it can be a bit, "Come on, guys, we need to stop asking questions here. We should be asking questions off the field." But at the start with the rookies, like, ask as many questions as you can, nothing stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting what you say about when you've got an experienced squad. It's so much easier to bring people in and they just see the experience. I always say, like, you know, babies don't learn. You don't teach a baby how to walk. It just sees everybody else walking, and
yeah, exactly.
Actually, I'm going to copy that. But, you know, so yeah, it's the same. Not calling rookies babies, but they're just they're watching everybody else and learning.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one thing, you know, you see at GB, like, everyone's a little bit out of the depth anyway, especially people that have never played 11-side football before. You know, they're like, "Oh, I'm a middle linebacker, I make every tackle, and I've caused 100 turnovers." I'm like, "This is Laura Dyer, this is Vanessa, this is Delhi." Like, good luck getting to the running back. And then when you get there, it's Ruth. Like, just, it's a whole different kind of game. Like, it's a bit of an eye-opener, but in the same respect, once they see what we mean. I mean, these girls aren't rookies that are turning up to GB. They're just not been to the program yet. Like, they've been invited because they're playing really well in their leagues, and then it's almost, they're a bit shell shocked. They're a bit like, "Oh my god!" Like, what I do at home in my home club is very, very minimal here. Like, I might make every play in the tournament, but actually here, like, I'm struggling to get through the O-line. Again, another problem with, like, it's crazy. Like, how many women's teams are there now? Like 18? Like, it's madness. It's absolute madness. Like, I'm all for women playing sport and, you know, being available, but are there coaches for this? Like, now we're moving to summer league. You know, we lose, like, some of our coaches might play. They might, you know, I'm all for playing in the summer, because I hate playing in the winter because it's cold and it's snowing and I have to go to Edinburgh and EKP every year. And, you know, getting on that road from Leeds is a nightmare. But the availability and the exposure for 11s, like, I'm all for the regional stuff. Like, the Diamond stuff's great. Like, I've coached at the Diamond. There was a competition year for GB, and we were just like, "Oh, we're exhausted. Like, let's see what the next pool of talent I've got at the 11s side." So, like, loads of the more experienced GB girls went onto the coaching side, and it was great because it wasn't. We knew the players because we played against him, and it exposed us to coaching in an environment where some may worry about what they know. Like, I mean, I'm quite a confident girl, quite a confident coach. So when I went down to coach the Bucks team, and I had 8 linebackers, and I was the only girl on the field on both sides, like offense, defense, on the staff. And then when we played the games, there was no other women that maybe a physio, but not like football staff. And I had a great experience at the university. Like, I was never a girl. I was never anything else. Weirdly, I was probably the only person that actually called coach, which I found bizarre, but it was, being a woman's never hindered me not coaching women, like coaching gents. But it all started from coaching the women. And I think once you get comfortable that you actually do know what you're talking about, that you can coach your peers, and, you know, you can coach the girls that you play against, or, you know, the people that you see once a year at finals, that the opportunities of coaching, I think more women should get into coaching, because we ask so many questions that actually, knowledge wise, yeah, we can't go beat up, you know, the biggest, baddest O-lineman. There's no point. People always question, oh, well, women shouldn't be playing men. I'm like, well, that's why there's a women, like, we can actually go play them. But when it comes to the coaching side, I think, you know, there's some people doing some great things, and because we ask so many questions, we want to know why would we not pass that on?
Definitely.
But I think girls can be a bit cautious, I think, until they go to a program where there's a woman. I mean, Nottingham's got Laura Moore, you know, what a great coach. She's confident, she knows her stuff, and she's coach. She's not, you know, that girl coach. And I think that's really important, but it's a persona, because she knows what she's talking about. You know, she doesn't take any rap, and she's a coach. Like, and there's nothing else about it. She's got great staff around her that they all support each other. Same at the GB level, we've got women coaches on there.
Definitely. I think, I mean, players just want to get better. They don't, that sounds a bit bad, but they don't care who coaches them, as long as they're getting
Exactly.
better.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's more an issue of us females are cautious that we are the minority.
Yeah.
Rather than being confident with what we know. Like, I went down and watched 5 games before I started coaching books, because I was like, oh, there's a lot of them. There's any females going to turn up, and I just thought, like, why would, like, just go and introduce yourself and see how it goes. I had a whale of a time.
The more trailblazers there are, the less teams like, yeah.
Exactly. And I think, like, the feedback I've had from books is actually quite nice.
Yeah.
That you just, because I think Griffins is quite a typical sort of books team, where there's like a lot of alumni coaches, and, you know, once a Griffin, always a Griffin. And
yeah,
I think it's like most teams, you know, that's where most people start playing football. Like, we were, all the people that are playing books football now, there wasn't really minis and juniors and all that sort of stuff when they were of that age. I mean, you're seeing more of it now, but 5 years ago, when all these coaches were playing, there wasn't like that the strong like approachable youth programs.
I mean, the players had a positive experience, and they want to keep going and give it back a little bit, and just continue being part of the team. And but yeah, fantastic. We need more trailblazers like you, sort of break the gender barrier, so to speak. And
the only thing that I found that works in my favour being a female coach is I'm the only voice that they hear. So if I shout something, they're like, oh, that's her. That's her, because I'm the only female voice.
Right.
Whereas if there's 10 men coaches shouting, if you don't know the coaches and don't recognise the voices and stuff, so I've only had positives.
Oh, brilliant!
It's made me fall in love with football more than I realised I'd fall in love with football. Like, I love the sport, I love playing it. You know, I love like having a rookie every year that I can sit and read playbook with and be like, oh, I love football, like I love football. But coaching at books, it's something I would say 4 years ago I would never have even considered. But I've, like, from starting my football, I've been around some amazing coaches, you know, obviously gym, I've played the first 5 games of gym. Like my first flag tournament, I met Wayne Hill. I've trained with, Jason Scott, like throwing the names around 100%. I've met Nelly from GB19s. But actually, every single person that I've met has taught me something, not necessarily like a scheme thing, but it's like that, oh, I've not thought about that. Oh, do you know what I mean? And like, I think people that could be really good coaches just need the exposure of people that are, go be an assistant. I live in Leeds, and I used to drive down to Tamworth practice every Sunday just to be around a top tier, like,
Yeah.
see how practice is run, see how the boys turn up, listen to Jason and like absorb everything that he's got. Even the players would be like, oh, do you mind if you watch me do this, coach? I'd be like, yeah, but what do you want me to do? And they'd be like, oh, I need to do this, but I don't think I'm doing it. And I'd be like, oh, right, okay. And then like we discuss it, and like it's just great to be around great people that love the game.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly why I'm just doing these and just chatting to people, because like you say, you learn from everybody, and it's just thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Right,
get me an actor on the same time. We'll do that Leeds Birmingham thing.
Oh, okay, we'll do that.
But she's beating me every time, so I've not got a leg to stand on, really.
Oh, okay.